Hi friends, I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to be talking to you about all the books I read in the month of February. The lighting is very changeable today, the weather is very changeable today, and there's quite high winds, so apologies for any background noise or strange lighting that goes on, but I'm just going to go with it and see how we get on. So just to jump right into it, in February I read I think about 10 books, and majority of them were for either Blackathon or Blacklit Challenge, which were two readathons I was taking part in the month of February. Overall, I think I had quite a good reading month. I have fond feelings about my reading, but there's quite a mixed range of ratings. So I'm just going to get into it, I suppose, and get started. The first book I read was called A Deadly Inside Scoop, and it was by Abby Collette. This is like a cosy mystery novel set in a small town in America, and the main protagonist in the book takes on her grandparents' ice cream shop, and one day discovers a dead body in the neighbourhood around her ice cream shop, and it's about she becomes a bit of a detective and trying to solve the case, and it's about that mystery unfolding at the same time as her managing the shop and managing the demands of a small business. So this was fun, light-hearted, and just kind of what I needed at that point in time that I read it. I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 3 stars, which for me is a positive rating. That means I liked it, but I didn't necessarily love it. And I just felt like it was just something you could kind of get lost in. So if you're looking for like escapism, but nothing like too intense, I would recommend this to you. I then read Remember by Toni Morrison, which is like a non-fiction about school integration in America. I thought it was like an adult book, but it's actually for children. But it was really, really good, and I would recommend it if you have children and you're trying to like educate them about racism, I guess, and also about the history of America and the history of school integration in the US. I found it very interesting. It was a topic I knew a fair bit about, but it was quite good to see Toni Morrison like put imagining feelings to the children in the pictures. That's essentially what the book does, and it's quite powerful, and I think it's a good one for like getting the conversation started with children. So yeah, I would recommend it. I gave it 4 or 5 stars, I can't remember, but definitely one I would recommend reading. I then read Bingo Love by T. Franklin. This was a reread for me. I read this last summer, I think, and I really liked it again, maybe even more so the second time around. I found it really comforting and sweet and lovely, and I like the message that it's never too late to live your truth and to be in love and live your fullest life. I just liked all of that. And what I kind of reflect on this time is that this is actually a jackpot edition, which means that there is the original Bingo Love in it, and then there are other comic creators who have imagined other stories for different characters in the original comic. And what I reflect on this time is that I actually love the Bingo Love story, but the other comic creators I was less keen on. So that was kind of interesting, because initially I had read them all as one and kind of reviewed them all as one, but this time I felt like I love Bingo Love, and I really enjoyed it, so I'd recommend that one. Next, I read The Woman Next Door by Juan Omotoso. This is a book about 2 women who are neighbours and they're rivals, and they live next door to each other in South Africa, and they have this long-seated sort of hatred for each other, I guess, and we're not sure why when the book starts out, but it's meant to be like a rivalry to friends kind of trope. This is all on the blurb, not a spoiler. I really like this one. This might even be one of my favourites of the month because it took me so much by surprise. I went into this one expecting like quite just a sort of straightforward, sweet kind of story, and I wasn't really expecting the amount of depth, and I think the way this took me by surprise was actually really brilliant. For me, it was like really quite quietly devastating as a narrative, and it's one that I would really recommend. I then read a poetry collection called Build Yourself a Boat by Clément Felix, and this is a collection of poems about like womanhood, specifically black womanhood. It's about trauma, it's about class, obviously race. It's a really interesting collection. I think that the writer has really high skills in poetry. I felt like the poems were a little bit too abstract for me personally as a reader, and I struggle to kind of pull out meaning from them. But I feel like that is probably me as a reader kind of failing, because I like poetry, but I'm not a huge poetry reader, and I struggle to kind of tease out meaning from really abstract poems. And while I really enjoy poetry, I don't think that I am the best person to talk about poetry. I will probably talk about another collection because I did read 2 poetry collections this month, and so there'll be another one to come. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this one specifically. I then read Half-Blood Blues by Essie Attuchen, and this is a World War II fictional narrative about a group of jazz musicians who lived between Berlin and France during the period of time of World War II, and it's very interesting. I felt like I learned a lot from reading this book. I studied World War II history in school up to what's called in Scotland Advanced Higher, which is like first year university kind of level, and I really was very, very interested in World War II history. I've been to see different sites across Europe, and very rarely, if ever, did I hear commentary about what it was like to be a black person at this time in Europe. And so I found it very, very interesting to learn about this through this fictional narrative. One of the things that I learned through reading this was that when France occupied the Rhineland, what that actually meant is that they took people from the colonised Senegal to occupy that area of land for them. And just thinking about the fact that we learned that a lot in school about the Rhineland and about the conflict there, and never once was that mentioned. I just think it kind of highlights the erasure of black people from history. This is overall a very slow-paced book, and while I found it educational and I liked the kind of themes of like deceit and betrayal and survival, I also found that it was quite, as I say, slow-paced, a little bit too slow-paced for me, and I felt like the characters could have been developed more, and there was a lot of like times where it was just dialogue between characters, but we weren't actually developing the characters through the dialogue. So I would have liked to have seen more of that, but you know, I really liked Washington Black by the same author, and I will definitely pick up whatever she writes next. I then read You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is like a sweet female romance. I think it's YA, and it's about a young girl who wants to run for prom queen so that she can earn the money for winning, and that she hopes will pay for her college tuition. And it is like quite sweet. It's about like how she runs for this, what she crafts herself like, because she has to present herself in a certain way to get votes to be voted for being prom queen. And it's about kind of finding yourself and like being your true self and all those kind of sweet things. I enjoyed it. I thought it was sweet and quite easy listening. There are some heavier themes such as like racism, homophobia, grief, chronic illness, but it's also just overall quite a sweet narrative, and I enjoyed it. It was in places a little bit cheesy, of course, with like these kind of YA romances. Sometimes they are a little bit cheesy, but yeah, sometimes it's also just the escapism you need. So if you're looking for escapism, this might be one that you pick up and enjoy. I then read LaGuardia by Nnedi Okorafor, and this is a graphic novel about it's basically interrogating like migration and anti-immigration policies, xenophobic policies and racist policies through a kind of fantasy or Afrofuturist lens. I found it really, really brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It might be one of my favourites of the month, to be honest. The like art style was not my most favourite art style, but I loved the contents and the messaging of the book. I also found it quite educational, to do with like Nigerian politics and history, and I found the discussion about anti-African policies very, very interesting, especially in light of the UK's recent decisions to introduce travel bans on like specific countries, aka targeting majority African countries, and the way that kind of policies affect people's opinions and outlooks about certain countries and how dangerous those rhetorics are. And those are all discussions that I absolutely love and I'm always interested in. So this is one that I would definitely recommend, and it's one I don't see a lot of people picking up, so I would love to see more people picking up a few light graphic novels and comics and stuff like that. I then read a collection of poems called Helen by Reginald Dwayne Betts, and I really like this. It's very varied in terms of style throughout, different techniques used and stuff like that, and it all kind of interrogates what it's like to be a convicted person in the United States. And I am always interested in things like that, especially when it's own voices in terms of somebody who has lived experience of being involved in the criminal justice system in some way. And I found it really, really interesting, really engaging, and I would really recommend it actually. My favourite poems were a series of poems which basically had been taken from court records in the US, and they had been blacked out certain passages in a kind of redacted style, and through that it kind of spoke volumes, because you're literally taking actual court records and showing the ways in which discrimination is written into policies and documents, and it was just really, really interesting. So I really, really liked them. And I also tabbed When I Think of Tamir Rice While Driving, If Absence Was a Source of Silence, and Confession. And I just genuinely think that I'll be picking up more from this poet, because they had a really nice style that I kind of was able to understand and follow. And sometimes that's the biggest challenge for me with poetry, is following all the messages and trying to work out what the poet is trying to say. But these were very accessible, I would say, in terms of poetry, and definitely one that I will look out for more from and would recommend other people read. The final book that I read in the month of February was The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This centres on a male-female relationship, and the male in the relationship is autistic and the female is actually Vietnamese. So the mum of the autistic man has decided that she wants him to be married, and she feels like she has to find him a bride, and so she finds him a lovely, sweet Vietnamese woman who she brings over to test if their relationship might work and if he might, like her, and she thinks that he might fall in love with her. So it's kind of will they, won't they kind of experience all throughout. And I thought it was just very sweet and predictable, but in a good way, in a sense. I felt like the final kind of 50 pages were not my favourite of the book. I enjoyed the start and the middle of this a lot more. But I would definitely read more from this author, and it's definitely one if you're looking for something escapist to maybe seek out. What I found quite good was their communication and them navigating how to communicate with one another. And he experienced difficulties with things like touch, where she experienced difficulties with things like culture shock. So it was how they navigated that together and how they communicated their needs, which I found really good. And there's also written in consent is written in, and I found that really refreshing, and it made the book more enjoyable for me. So if you saw my TBR for the month, you'll know that I was taking part in Blackathon, and the group read for that was Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives. And I would feel strange to wrap up the month without talking about it, even though I don't tend to talk about books I do not finish. I'm thinking of possibly introducing a video where I do talk about that, and let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I personally find it quite interesting to see why people abandon books. But yeah, I DNF'd this one, and it was very much a case of it's me, not you, with the book. And I found some of the content quite difficult to read, and it was really upsetting me. And so I decided for my own mental health, basically, just to DNF that. So I don't really know what else to say about it beyond that. I just wanted to acknowledge it because I am wrapping up February, and I did say I would be participating in that readathon, and I did feel bad. At the time I felt very bad, but I have kind of spoken to myself and kind of felt like my mental health is more important than any book. It always will be. So if I have to put something down because it is really affecting me, which that one was, then that's just what I do. And yeah, I wouldn't even be acknowledging it probably publicly if it wasn't for the fact that it was a readathon, and that was part of it. So yeah, overall I had a really good reading month in February. I really enjoyed a lot of the books that I read. Picking out favourites is probably quite difficult. I really liked Helen by Reginald Dwayne Betts. I also really liked LaGuardia by Nnedi Okorafor, and The Woman Next Door by Juan de Omotoso. and I had a really lot of fun as well reading The Bride Test and The Inside Scoop. They were really nice, like escapist reads, and I would recommend them. I had a good reading month, as I say, and I hope you did as well. And I'd love to hear if you read anything good in the month of February. And if you have read any of these books that I talked about here, what did you think about them? Did you have similar feelings to me? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.